The genes of you and me, they're all made of DNA. We're all made of the same chemical DNA. We're all made of DNA.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Discovering New Advances, or DNA, a podcast that keeps you up to date on the world of genetics in easy to understand language. So whether you are a student in middle school or a grandparent, you will easily be able to follow along. I'm Kira, and on this episode, I will give an introduction lesson on Punnett Squares. The following episodes will either keep you updated on genetic advances in the scientific world or teach more lessons on genetics. So if you're already familiar with how genetics work, you can skip to the following episodes about news on the genetic advances happening today and how it's affecting our world. For more information, please visit dnapodcast.com or email info@dnapodcast.com. Again, that's dnapodcast.com. I want to thank Melody Sheep for providing the intro music. So as I mentioned earlier, the topic of this episode's lesson is Punnett Squares. You may be asking yourself, what are Punnett Squares? Well, let's start with the basics. Using a Punnett square is the simplest way to predict the mathematical chance of inheriting a disease or trait. It is simply a grid that shows the genotypes of the parents and all possible genotypes of their children, including the likelihood of the child inheriting a disease or trait. In the first episode, I briefly mentioned phenotypes and have just referred to genotypes. Before we get into learning how to use a Punnett square, let's review what genotypes and phenotypes are. Genotypes are the internally coded, inheritable information. They determine what a person's phenotype is. Therefore, the phenotype is anything that is part of the observable structure, function, or behavior of someone. For example, the phenotype of a red rose would be the color red. The genotype would be the internal coding that makes it red. This could be represented by capital R, capital R. This will make more sense as I explain the outcomes of the Punnett squares later on. To start off using the Punnett squares, we draw a grid, just like a tic-tac-toe board, with perpendicular lines with spaces between them big enough to write 2 letters in each box. It may help to draw along with me so you have a clear visual of what is happening. On the top and side boxes of the grid, excluding the first box, this is where the parents' genotypes are going to be written. It doesn't matter which is on the top or side, however, it is helpful to be consistent with the location of the parents, so to avoid confusion, I always put the father on the top and the mother on the side. In order to fill the grid in, now we need an example. Let's use the eye color trait. Let's say that father has brown eyes and the mother has blue eyes. Let's also say both parents have a homozygous genotypes. This basically means the 2 copies of the gene, also known as alleles of a gene, are the same. So capital B would represent the brown eye trait, while lowercase b represents the blue eye trait. So the genotype representing the father, which we were writing at the top, will be capital B, capital B. Each B goes in a separate box. Therefore, you should have written capital B in the second and third box on the first row. The reason the father's genotype is capital B instead of lowercase b, is because brown eyes are dominant. Being dominant means that this gene rules over the recessive gene, in which case is lowercase b, blue eyes. Whenever there is a capital letter, that is the gene that the phenotype is going to show. So the father's genotype is capital B, as we've said before, because he has a homozygous dominant genotype with the phenotype of brown eyes. That means that the mother's genotype will be lowercase b, because she has homozygous genotype with the phenotype of blue eyes. Therefore, we'll write in a lowercase b in the second and third box on the right side. Now we will fill in the rest of the boxes, again excluding the first box, from the information from the 2 parents' genotype to find out the possible outcomes for the children's genotype, which will then determine the possible phenotypes for eye color for the children. We do this by combining the genotypes of the parents. So the second box down and second box to the right will be capital B, lowercase b. This is because we are taking a B from the father, since that is the right box above it, and a lowercase b from the mother, since that is right next to it. If you do this for all 4 boxes, it will be the same outcome for each box. Capital B, lowercase b. This capital B, lowercase b, this is a heterozygous genotype. So now, what eye color will all the children have since their genotype is capital B, lowercase b? If you answered brown, you'd be correct. This is because the capital B represents brown eyes, and it is dominant over the lowercase b representing the blue eyes. Therefore, all the children's phenotype will be brown eyes. Now going back to why we use Punnett squares. That's to predict the mathematical chance of inheriting a disease or trait. Like I just said, each child will have the genotype capital B, lowercase b, so 100% of the children will have brown eyes. So hopefully that helped in understanding how and why we use Punnett Squares. It may be helpful to listen to this again to review the information and drawing along with me. It's hard to do in your head. So if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, feel free to email in at info@dnapodcast.com. Please visit dnapodcast.com for more episodes and this lesson along with others, not only in audio format but also in written format. There is also a contact form there for easy access to send in feedback about the show or any questions you might have. Or you can email directly at info@dnapodcast.com. So to keep in contact with the show, you can like it on Facebook and follow it on Twitter, both at /DNA Podcast. Please drop a review on iTunes. It is highly appreciated and the best way to attract subscribers so others like yourself can benefit from the show. You can find all those links I mentioned on the website, dnapodcast.com. Thanks for listening and join me next episode to learn and discover new advances in the world of genetics.